Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. Did you get a little shot of nerves this weekend when Ann Selzer and the Des Moines Register revealed polling that showed Kamala Harris winning in red Iowa? The state's most prominent newspaper now has Kamala Harris up 3 points in its final poll, again in a red state. This polling is done by Ann Selzer. She's considered to be the gold standard, but she might lose that designation in about 24 hours because this poll, as we see it, makes no sense at all. Selzer credited a sudden massive shift away from Trump, mostly to abortion, which is not a new issue. It's been around for a couple years now. But that, of course, is the long-shot Democrat dream, right? That pro-choice, manic liberal women would carry the worst political candidate in history across the finish line. Rachel Maddow could barely contain herself when she reported this poll last night.
In some states, there is a gold standard pollster who appears to be unaffected by larger dynamics that are making everybody whine about the polls. The prototypical example of a gold standard poll is the Iowa poll done by Ann Selzer. In Senate and presidential races, you have seen Ann Selzer basically as a living bullseye. This is that poll, and it is a shock result. It shows Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump by 3 points in Iowa.
Now, the assumption being drawn for this, of course, is that Kamala is so strong that she's flipping red states blue, which is the precise narrative needed after polling has indicated for the last 2 weeks that 4 blue states are in play for Donald Trump: Virginia, New Hampshire, New Mexico, and Tim Walz's own home state of Minnesota, maybe. This was exactly what Kamala needed to buoy her support 72 hours before Election Day. And MAGA world, of course, got very nervous. The idea that Trump could lose a state that he's expected to win by somewhere close to maybe 10 points is, of course, a shocker. But today, swing state data started pouring in that calmed a lot of that Iowa fury. Numbers that indicate a potential bloodbath victory for Donald Trump tomorrow. From Democrat data firm TargetSmart, urban turnout has completely collapsed in every single swing state when you compare to 2020. We're going to look at just 4 of the 7: Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, and Georgia. In Philly, in Phoenix, in Detroit, in Atlanta, the major engines that win Democrat elections, the pistons are not firing. And it gets even worse. Women, another key constituency for Democrats. Look at Pennsylvania right over my shoulder, down nearly 500,000 women compared to this very point 4 years ago. On MSNBC, former Obama campaign manager Jim Messina had clearly seen these numbers when he gave an unusually bleak soundbite for him.
The early vote numbers are a little scary, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Republicans didn't do what they did last time. Last time Trump said don't early vote, and so they didn't. Republicans do have an advantage in early vote numbers. When the early vote come in, it's going to look a little bit different than 2020, and that's scary.
So it's not scary because Republicans are voting early. For the last 2 weeks, they've seen that. They've spun that as Republicans are just cannibalizing their November 5th vote with the early vote. What's scary for Messina and the rest of the party is that there appears to be so little enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. But then, are you really surprised by that, is the question. This has been the shallowest political campaign we've maybe ever seen. Nobody really connects to Kamala Harris. Nobody knows who she is, least of all herself, it would seem. And there's been no great course correction that would stop the bleeding that we've seen for the past month for her. She has not nailed any tough interviews and changed any minds. She's still not held a formal press conference or given a reasonable platform that makes any sense to people. And the rare times that she's cornered with a non-layup question, she bombs, as she did when she was asked on Sunday about how she voted on a California ballot measure that's aimed at repealing the insane criminal justice reforms that were brought in after George Floyd, particularly ending the law that makes it nearly risk-free for criminals in California to shoplift anything as long as it's under about $1,000. Here is how Kamala answered what should have been one of the easiest questions for her.
My ballot is on its way to California, and I'm going to trust the system that it will arrive there. And I am not going to talk about the vote on that because, honestly, it's the Sunday before the election, and I don't intend to create an endorsement one way or another around it. So, but I did vote.
So the former prosecutor who then raised money to free the scum of our society during the 2020 riots is now running as tough on crime, but won't reveal how she voted on a ballot measure aimed at actually arresting looters. Her campaign is just as flaky, running different ads on the war in Israel depending on who's watching, it seems. In Michigan, telling Arab voters that she won't ignore the Gaza genocide. In Pennsylvania, where it's more Jewish, Kamala is very pro-Israel in those same ads on that same topic. Are you ready for a presidency marked by this kind of pandering paralysis? Doesn't that sound fun? How about a president who focus groups what she's eating for breakfast in case somebody sees her? That's what you're voting for when you vote for Kamala, a pending disaster for the country. But she has the entire machine that is working to foist her into power, of course, including Obama, who resorted to flat out lying about Trump this weekend.
You know why gas was so cheap? Because there was a global lockdown during COVID and nobody was driving. And he's talking about it like it was the good old days.
No, go back to 2019 before the pandemic and gas was pretty much just as cheap, Barack. Obama then once again claimed Trump said there were good Nazis in Charlottesville in 2017, a claim that has been debunked 1,000 times. Barack Obama jumping the shark. His appeal has always been in seeming very authentic. That was his best weapon, and he is authentic. When you watch him, you can admit you might hate him, but he's good. He's really good. In a political party that's filled with people like Kamala Harris, he stands out even more. Barack had a certain way about him, but he sold that out this weekend. And if the polls have you nervous, just remember that 44 years ago, the polls had Carter and Reagan neck and neck. And Reagan ended up winning 44 states on that election day. The New York Times admitting across these final polls, white Democrats were 16% likelier to respond than white Republicans. That's a larger disparity than our earlier polls this year, and it's not much better than our final polls in 2020, even with the pandemic over. It raises the possibility that the polls could underestimate Mr. Trump yet again. You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.